He stopped at his own door, hand on the handle, because someone inside had already set the table for him. The floorboard creaks before he can quiet it. A pot simmers low on the stove, the lid tapping soft with each bubble. She doesn't turn right away, just stirs, slow and steady, like she belongs there. His fingers tighten around the revolver, then loosen. 2 plates, still warm. Tell me, would you walk in or walk away? Caleb Ward came off the Bitterroot Trail with dust ground deep into his coat seams, and the smell of cattle still clinging to him like a second skin. The sun had already dropped behind the ridge, leaving the land washed in that thin, fading gold that never lasted long enough. His horse moved steady beneath him, knowing the road home without needing the reins. He wasn't thinking about much, just the usual things. Water for the horse, wood for the stove, maybe coffee if he had any left in the tin. Then the horse slowed. Caleb lifted his head slightly. The ranch sat ahead, low and familiar against the darkening sky. Same fence line, same porch, same quiet. Except it wasn't quiet. There was light in the window, not the last glow of day, not reflection, lamplight. Steady, intentional. Caleb stopped the horse without pulling the reins. He sat there a moment, letting the stillness stretch out around him. Then he noticed the smoke, a thin line rising from the chimney, drifting sideways in the evening air. He hadn't left a fire going. His hand moved to the side of the saddle, fingers closing around the grip of his revolver. Not fast, not nervous, just the kind of movement a man made after enough years of knowing that trouble didn't always announce itself. He swung down from the horse and tied the reins to the porch post. The wood creaked under his boots as he stepped up, louder than he remembered. Or maybe the house had just been too quiet for too long. The door wasn't locked. Caleb pushed it open slowly. Warmth met him first, then the smell. Something thick and slow-cooked. Onions, meat, bread maybe. It hit him in the chest before his thoughts caught up. He stepped inside. She stood at the stove with her back to him, one hand steady on a wooden spoon, stirring a pot that gave off a low, patient simmer. The lamplight caught along the curve of her shoulders, softening the edges but not hiding anything. She moved like she knew where everything was, like she didn't need to look. Caleb raised the gun halfway, not aimed yet, just ready. The floorboard shifted under his boot. She turned. Ivy Bennett looked at him without a start, without that quick flinch most people gave when they found a stranger in the doorway. Her eyes met his, steady and level, like she had been expecting him at that exact moment. For a second, neither of them spoke. Caleb lowered the gun before he realized he had decided to. "I knew you'd be back today," she said. Her voice was even. No apology in it. No edge either, just a statement laid down where it belonged. Caleb's gaze moved past her without turning his head. The table was set. 2 plates, a loaf of bread already cut, a tin cup beside each place. His cup. He recognized the dent along the rim. He took off his hat and set it on the table. The metal buckle tapped softly against the wood. "What are you doing in my house?" he asked. Ivy turned back to the stove, gave the pot one slow stir, then set the spoon down across the rim. "I'm making supper," she said. She didn't look at him when she said it. Didn't need to. The fire cracked low behind her. The smell filled the room, steady and real. Caleb stood there a moment longer, feeling the weight of the place shift around him. The walls were the same, the table, the shelf by the window. But something had changed, and he couldn't yet say what. He noticed the towel by the basin. Folded, not the way he left it. "You got a key," he said. Ivy nodded once. "Mrs. Parker?" Caleb let out a breath through his nose. That made sense in a way that didn't settle anything. "She didn't ask me." "No," Ivy said. Then after a beat, "She didn't think she needed to." That hung in the air for a second. Not sharp. Just there. Caleb moved farther into the room, boots leaving faint tracks across the floorboards. He set his hand on the back of the chair, but didn't pull it out. "If you want me gone," Ivy said, still facing the stove, "I'll go." She said it the same way she had said everything else. No weight added, no defense built around it. Caleb looked at her then. Really looked. The way she stood. The way her shoulders stayed easy. Not like someone ready to run. Not like someone trying to claim anything either. Just there. The pot simmered again. A small sound, almost lost. He pulled the chair out slowly and sat. Ivy didn't turn around right away. When she did, she reached for the ladle and filled the plates without asking. No invitation, no question. Caleb picked up the spoon, held it there a second, then took a bite. The food was hot. Real, not something thrown together in a hurry. He ate again. Slower this time. Across the table, Ivy sat down, her hands settling beside her plate before she began. She didn't look at him, not avoiding, just giving the moment space to be what it was. Outside, the last light slipped off the hills. The wind brushed against the window frame, low and steady. Inside, the house held something it hadn't held in years. Not noise, not company. Something else. Caleb kept eating, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't hurry to finish. He slowed down without meaning to. Took another bite after the food had already cooled some. The kind of thing a man notices only after it's done. Across from him, Ivy ate in the same steady way, not watching him, not avoiding him either, just letting the room settle. When the meal was over, she stood first, gathered the plates, carried them to the basin like she had done it before. The water bucket was filled. He hadn't filled it. Caleb stayed seated a moment longer than he needed to. Then he pushed his chair back and stepped outside. The night had come in clean and quiet. Stars already spread across the sky. His horse shifted near the post, stamping once, then settling. He stood there a while, hat in his hand, listening to the land the way he always did when he got back. Only now, the sound coming from inside the house didn't belong to memory. It was real. Water moving in the basin. A plate set down. A chair shifted slightly. He went back in. The dishes were already stacked to dry. The towel hung straight, not tossed over the peg the way he usually left it. Ivy stood by the table, folding something, one of his shirts. He knew it by the worn cuff. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She didn't look up right away. Finished the fold. Set it aside. "I know," she said. "That was all." Caleb leaned his hand on the edge of the table, looked around again. The place hadn't been changed much. That was the strange part. Nothing out of place, just handled. "Mrs. Parker told me you'd be gone a while," Ivy said after a moment. "Said the place gets quiet." "It does fine," Caleb replied. Ivy nodded once like she had expected that answer. "I'm sure it does." Silence settled again. Not tight, just there. Caleb reached for the coffee tin on the shelf, shook it lightly. Still had some left. He poured a bit into the pot and set it on the stove. Ivy stepped aside without being asked. Gave him the space like she understood how a man moved in his own kitchen. "You staying tonight?" he asked. She met his eyes then. "If you'll have me." It wasn't said soft. Wasn't said bold either. Just clear. Caleb looked at the door, then back at her. "You've already stayed," he said. Ivy gave a small nod. Not agreement, just acknowledgement. He poured the coffee when it was ready, set one cup on the table, kept the other in his hand. After a second, he pushed the extra cup a little closer to her side. She sat, took it, didn't thank him. They drank without speaking. Morning came with the sound of the pump handle outside. Caleb woke to it before he opened his eyes. The rhythm was steady, not rushed. He stepped out onto the porch, boots still loose, shirt half-buttoned. Ivy stood by the well, drawing water. The bucket came up clean. She carried it toward the trough, set it down, then went back for another. She didn't look at him right away. "You don't have to do that," he said. She tipped the bucket, letting the water run. "I'm already doing it." Caleb watched a moment. Then he stepped down and took the next bucket without a word. They worked like that. No plan, no discussion, just small things done when they needed doing. By mid-morning, the loose hinge on the back window had been fixed. The step on the porch didn't creak the same way anymore. Caleb noticed both, said nothing. He saddled his horse near noon. "Town?" Ivy asked. "Yeah." She wiped her hands on the cloth at her waist. "Bring back flour if you pass by the store. And lamp oil." Caleb paused, looked at her. "You planning on staying?" he asked. Ivy met his gaze without shifting. "I'm planning on being here today." That was enough of an answer to stand on. Caleb nodded once, then rode out. The road into town cut through dry grass and low brush, the dust lifting under the horse's hooves. He tied up outside the general store, same as always. Inside, the air smelled of coffee beans and leather. Old Mr. Halverson stood behind the counter, weighing out nails. He looked up when Caleb stepped in. "You're back," he said. "Looks that way." Caleb set a small list on the counter. Flour, oil, a few other things. Halverson glanced at it, then at him. "Heard you've got company." Caleb didn't answer right away. Reached for a sack of feed by the wall, checking the stitching. "Folks talk," Halverson went on. "Always have." Caleb paid for his things and gathered them up. Outside, Sheriff Nolan Briggs leaned against the post, hat low over his brow. He straightened when Caleb stepped out. "Mind if I ask you something?" Nolan said. Caleb set the sack over the saddle. "Depends." Nolan glanced down the road, then back. "That woman at your place. She staying there?" Caleb rested his hand on the saddle horn. "She's not trespassing." "That's not what I asked." Caleb met his eyes. "Then ask it plain." Nolan held his gaze a moment longer than needed. "You sure you know what you're doing?" Caleb mounted up, adjusted the reins. "I know what's happening on my land," he said. That was all he offered. He rode out before Nolan said anything else. By the time he reached the ranch again, the sun had started its drop. The door was closed this time. Smoke rose steady from the chimney. Inside, the lamp was already lit. And on the table, there were 2 plates again. Caleb stood in the doorway a second longer than he had the night before. Then he stepped in. The room felt smaller somehow, not cramped, just filled. Ivy looked up from the stove as he set the flour and oil down on the table. She didn't ask about town, didn't ask who he saw or what they said. She only moved the kettle aside to make space for what he brought. He noticed she had swept the floor. Not clean in a new way, just even, like someone had taken the time to make it right. "You got what we needed," she said. Caleb nodded. Store had enough. That was all. They ate again that night. Same table, same quiet. But the silence had changed shape. It no longer sat between them. It moved around them. The days settled into something neither of them named. Caleb woke earlier. Sometimes the coffee was already poured. Sometimes it wasn't. No pattern held long enough to be called a habit. Ivy worked through the house like she had always been there. A hinge tightened. A shelf cleared. A tear in one of his shirts mended with thread he didn't remember owning. He didn't ask where it came from. One afternoon, he found her sitting by the window with a small stack of papers in her lap. Not letters. School pages. Children's handwriting, uneven and careful. She set them aside when she noticed him. "You keep those?" he asked. "For a while," she said. "Then I let them go." Caleb leaned against the wall, looked at the pages, then back at her. "Why'd you come out here?" he asked. Ivy held his gaze a second longer than usual. Then she looked down, smoothing one of the pages with her hand. "Same reason anyone leaves somewhere," she said. "It stops fitting." Caleb didn't press. By late week, the sky began to change. It started with the wind. Low at first, then steady. By afternoon, the clouds had rolled in thick from the west, pressing down over the hills. Caleb stood by the fence line, watching the shift. "That's coming fast," Ivy said behind him. He didn't turn. Yeah. They worked quicker after that. Pulled in what needed pulling in. Secured what could be carried by wind. By the time the first drop hit the dust, the light had already thinned. Rain followed hard. Not a slow fall, a straight drop, heavy enough to flatten the grass and send the loose dirt running. Ivy stepped onto the porch, looking out toward the road. "I should head back," she said. Caleb shook his head before she finished. "Not in that." The wind picked up, pushing rain against the side of the house. The boards creaked. The sky darkened too fast for evening. She didn't argue. "Then I'll stay," she said. They went inside without another word. The storm settled in like it meant to stay. Rain against the roof. Wind slipping through the seams of the house, carrying cold with it. Caleb added wood to the fire. The flame lifted, then steadied. "You take the bed," he said after a while. "I'll make do out here." Ivy looked at him, then toward the small room beyond the door. "It's going to be cold," she said. "I've slept worse." She nodded once, like she accepted that. Then she said, "There's no sense freezing for pride." The words stayed in the air a moment. Caleb let out a slow breath, looked at the floor, then back at her. "All right," he said. The room was small. One bed, one lamp. The kind of place built for a man who expected to be alone. They moved without speaking much. Boots set aside, coats hung, the lamp turned low. Caleb lay on one side of the bed, Ivy on the other, space between them wide enough to matter. The storm carried on outside, a steady force. Nothing sudden, just constant. Inside, the quiet returned. Not empty, not uneasy. Just close. Caleb stared at the ceiling for a while, listened to the rhythm of the rain, then to something else. Her breathing. Even. Slow. He shifted once, adjusting the blanket. His hand moved across the space without thinking. Stopped just short. For a moment, it stayed there. Then it touched. Light. Barely more than contact. He pulled back right away. Ivy didn't move. Didn't turn. Didn't say anything. The storm went on. Time passed in pieces too small to count. Sometime before morning, the rain softened. The wind dropped. The room held its shape. When Caleb woke, the bed beside him was empty. The blanket was folded. Not tight. Just enough. He stepped into the main room. The fire had been banked. The kettle sat near the edge of the stove, still warm. Her bag was gone. The door stood closed behind her. Caleb stood there a while, looking at the place where she had been. Nothing was out of place, but something had shifted, and this time, there was no way to set it back. Caleb stepped out onto the porch, the morning air still damp from the storm. The ground held the rain in dark patches, the kind that stayed soft underfoot long after the sky cleared. He looked toward the road without thinking. Nothing moved. He went back inside. The house felt larger again, not empty the way it had been before, just aware of what was missing. The second cup still sat near the edge of the table. He picked it up, turned it once in his hand, then set it back where it had been. By noon, he saddled his horse. The ride into town took longer than usual, not because of the road, because he didn't hurry. At the general store, he tied up and stepped inside. Same smell, same shelves, same quiet talk drifting between the walls. Mrs. Halverson looked up from the counter. "Morning, Caleb." He nodded. She weighed out sugar for another customer, then glanced back at him. "You just missed her." Caleb didn't ask who. "She was here early," she went on. "Picked up paper and ink. Said she had writing to do." Caleb rested his hand on the counter. The wood was worn smooth where people leaned over it. "She say where she's headed?" he asked. Mrs. Halverson hesitated just enough to notice. "Heard something about Denver. School there. Bigger place." Caleb nodded once. That was all. Outside, Sheriff Nolan Briggs stood by the hitching post again, like he had made a habit of it. "Town's talking," Nolan said without greeting. "They usually are," Caleb replied. Nolan shifted his weight. "That woman, she's got options. Places where folks won't watch every step she takes." Caleb adjusted the saddle strap, checking the buckle. "You got something to say?" "Say it," Nolan added. Caleb looked up then. "Yeah, you're saying it for me." Nolan held his gaze, then let it go. "Just don't pretend you don't know what's coming." Caleb mounted and rode out before the conversation had a chance to grow. He didn't turn toward home right away. Instead, he followed the road past the mill, past the small church, to the narrow lane that led to the edge of town. Ivy's place stood there, a small house with a sloped roof and a window facing the road. The curtain was half drawn. He didn't go up to the door. He sat on the horse a moment, then turned back. By the time he reached the ranch, the sun had already started to drop. The door was closed. No smoke. Inside, the air held still. He set his hat on the table. Waited. It took longer than he expected before he heard it. Footsteps on the porch. The door opened. Ivy stepped in, carrying a folded paper in one hand. She paused when she saw him, not surprised, just measuring the space. "You came back," she said. "Yeah." She set her bag down by the chair. The paper stayed in her hand. Caleb noticed it. Didn't ask. She moved to the stove, checked the fire, added a piece of wood. Routine. Steady. "I was in town," she said after a moment. "I heard." She glanced at him then. "Did you?" Silence stretched. Caleb leaned against the table, arms loose at his sides. "That place in Denver," he said. "It's real?" Ivy nodded once. "It is. You thinking of going?" She didn't answer right away. She folded the paper once, then again, careful along the edges. I'm thinking, she said. Caleb nodded. The room held still again, the kind of stillness that waited for something to land. He could feel the words sitting there, the ones that would have been easy, the ones that would have held her in place. He didn't reach for them. Instead, he said, "If you go, I won't stop you." Ivy's hands paused on the paper. She looked up slowly, not hurt, not surprised, just still. "That all?" she asked. Caleb met her eyes. "That's what I've got." The fire cracked behind her. She nodded once, set the paper down on the table between them. "All right," she said. No argument, no question, just that. She moved past him to the basin, filled a cup with water, drank it, then set it aside. Caleb watched her, not following, not stepping in. She picked up her bag again, then set it back down. "Not tonight," she said, more to herself than to him. He didn't answer. Outside, the wind moved through the grass, softer now, carrying the last of the storm away. Inside, the distance between them didn't feel wide. It felt chosen, and neither of them crossed it. The night passed without anything breaking, but nothing settled either. The fire burned low. The house held its breath in that quiet way that comes after something has already changed. Morning came thin and pale through the window. Caleb was up before the light fully reached the floor. He moved through the room slower than usual, set water on the stove, measured coffee like it mattered more than it should. Ivy stepped out from the back room a few minutes later, coat already on, bag in her hand. He noticed that first. "You heading out early?" he said. She nodded. "There's a wagon leaving south by noon. I can catch it if I don't wait." Caleb poured the coffee into 2 cups, set one down where she usually sat. She didn't take it. For a moment, neither of them moved. The sound of the kettle settling on the stove filled the space. "I wasn't going to leave without saying anything," she said. "I figured." He picked up his cup, took a sip, didn't look at her. Ivy stepped closer to the table, set her bag down, not fully, just enough to rest her hand on it. "That place in Denver," she said. "It's steady. Work every day. People who don't ask the same questions over and over." Caleb nodded once. "Sounds like something worth going to." Ivy watched him for a second, waiting, not for agreement, for something else. He didn't give it. She picked up the cup then, took a small sip, set it back down. "I thought you might say more than that," she said. Caleb let out a quiet breath, set his cup aside. "I thought about it," he said. "And?" He looked at her now, not past her, not around. "And I decided I wasn't going to." The words landed clean. No edge, no apology. Ivy held his gaze. Then she nodded slowly. "All right." She picked up her bag again. This time she didn't set it back down. Caleb watched her move toward the door. Each step steady. No hesitation. The kind of leaving that had already been decided before the moment came. His hand rested on the edge of the table, fingers tightening without much sound. She reached for the handle. He spoke before he could stop himself. "I don't want to keep living like this." Ivy paused. Didn't turn right away. "Like what?" she asked. Caleb pushed himself off the table, took a step forward, then another. "Like I don't need anyone," he said. The room held still. Ivy turned then, slowly, her eyes searching his face like she hadn't done before. Caleb swallowed once. "I thought that was the way to do it," he went on. "Stay out of people's way. Don't ask for anything. Don't expect anything back. He stopped a few feet from her. "That worked fine," he said. "Until it didn't." Ivy didn't move. Caleb took another breath. Let it out slower. "I'm not asking you to stay," he said. "I'm not going to tell you where you belong." He shook his head slightly. "But I'm done pretending it doesn't matter if you're here or not." The words settled into the space between them. "I need you," he said. No weight added, no reach to soften it. Just the truth, laid down where it could stand on its own. Ivy stood there, with her hand still on the door. For a moment, it looked like she might say something right away. She didn't. Instead, she let the silence stretch, long enough to feel it. Then she set her bag down. Not quickly. Not slow either. Just set it down. "I'm not staying because you need me," she said. Caleb nodded. "I know." She stepped closer. Not enough to close the distance. Just enough to change it. "And I'm not leaving just because it's easier somewhere else." He watched her, not interrupting. "I'll stay," she said, "if I decide this is where I want to be." "That's all I'm asking," Caleb said. She studied him for another second, then gave a small nod. "All right. No promise. No certainty." But the door wasn't opened. The bag stayed where it was. Caleb reached for his cup again, took a sip, though it had gone lukewarm. Ivy moved back to the table, sat down like she had the night before. He didn't sit right away. He stood there a moment, taking in the room, the chair, the second cup, the light coming through the window. Then he pulled the chair out and sat across from her. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Outside, the road waited, the same as always. Inside, something else had taken its place, not held, not claimed, just chosen. And maybe that's the part that stays with you long after the dust settles. Because if you've ever stood in a doorway like that, one foot still in the life you know, the other stepping into something uncertain, you understand how quiet those moments can be. No music, no grand words. Just a breath you hold a little longer than usual, wondering if this is the place you finally stop running. Caleb didn't build a life by asking for much, and Ivy didn't come looking to belong to anyone. But somewhere between a warm meal, a storm that closed the road, and a door left open without being held, something found its way in. Not fast, not loud, just steady. And maybe that's the lesson here. That love isn't always about holding on tight. Sometimes it's about stepping back far enough for the other person to choose you, and trusting yourself to stay when it matters. So if you've ever let something go because you thought it was the right thing, or stayed because it felt true in your bones, you already know how rare that kind of choice is. Tell me, have you ever chosen something that scared you just because it felt right? There are more stories like this waiting. Quiet ones, strong ones, the kind that stay with you longer than you expect. If you'd like to hear them, you're always welcome here.